Hello. In this video, we are going to be looking over the hoop question in week 7's worksheet. So yeah, let's get started. This question is going to be a what would Python display type of question. So it's really important that we look at the classes that they give us and understand it. So first, we have class baller, and inside of it, we have this all players class variable, and that's going to be assigned to an empty array. And after that, we have this init method, which init methods are just how we construct objects of class baller, or yeah, of how we construct objects of class baller, sorry. So after that, we have this argument, or these arguments, sorry, as a TLDR to the initial reading of this worksheet. This self is just going to be a reference to the object that we are dealing with when inside these methods and stuff. And so we have this arg method and hasBall. Specifically with hasBall, because it has this equals false ahead of it, that just means that by default, if we don't pass in a parameter for hasBall, it's just going to be set to false. Alrighty, so getting into the body of this method, we have self.name equals name, which is just the object that we are referring to's name is going to be set to the parameter that we passed. Same goes for hasBall. And here we are accessing the baller class to see this the all players variable, and we're just going to append the object to the array. Alrighty, so now we have this passBall method. Of course, we have the self and other player. Going into it, we check if the object dot hasBall equals is true. We go through this, which is just we now set the object's hasBall to be false, and we instead set the other player's hasBall variable to be true, and in the end we just return true. Otherwise, if this is false, just return false. Yeah. And lastly, we have this class ballhog, and what it's doing here is just inheriting the baller class, which means that if we don't override any of the methods or variables, that we just make a reference to the baller class. So sorry, in this case, here we are overriding the passBall method, and instead of doing how the baller class wants us to do it, we just return false, specifically for ballhog objects. Alrighty, so now that we have gone through the code, we should probably go to the code prompts. So here we have Catherine variable is going to be set to an object of the baller class, and in it we have Catherine as a name and true as hasBall. And here we have Albert. We're going to make a ball hog object. And so because there is no init method here, we just refer to the ball class because it is inheriting it. And we are only given the name, so that means that the name is going to be set to Albert, but the hasBall variable is just automatically going to get set to false. So in turn, what that would look like is a lot like this. Sorry. Oops. Where did I put it? Okay, right here. Okay. All right, so it's going to look like this. All right, so now we want to know what this outputs. Len baller.allPlayers. We just want to see the length of the all players class variable in the baller class. So what that would mean is that, remember, when we initialize these two objects, at the end of its initialization, we would append the object to the baller to the all players variable in baller. So this would just return 2. And now moving on, we have baller.name. That means we want to look at the baller class and see if there's any name variable inside here. And because there is none that we can access, this would actually just error. And now we want to get the length of Albert.allPlayers. Thing to note is that objects can access their class variables. So this would actually be valid, and we're gonna have Albert.allPlayers. Albert is of class baller, and we want to access .allPlayers, and because it is available to us, we can actually just return 2. All right. So now we have Catherine.passBall. Because passBall does not have an other player parameter passed into it, we actually can't run this as a method or a line of code. So this would actually just error. This next one, we do have another player's we are given an other player parameter, so we can actually go into the code. What we want to do is if self, and in this case it's going to be Catherine. So if Catherine has the ball is true, and according to this, it is. So we can go inside. We want to set its hasBall variable to be false, other player's hasBall method variable to be true, and return true at the very end. So what this is going to look like is we erase this. This gets set to false. This gets set to true. And then we just return true. If we try to run that line again, Catherine.passBall Albert, what's going to happen is that Catherine no longer has their hasBall variable as true, so we'd sorry, so we would just return false. All right, so this next one, we have ballhog.passBall, Albert Catherine. This kind of ties into the whole self thing in that you don't necessarily have to pass in a self, but this time we are. So we look at the ballhog class, we go to its passBall method, and what's going to be put, because we do not specify the self at the very beginning, we have to specify self within the parameters. So self is now going to be Albert, and the other player is going to be Catherine. So, anyways, this would just return false because we were looking at the ballhog class, ballhog class's passBall method, and it would just return false. So now we have Albert.passBall Catherine. In this case, we have specified the self as Albert, and so we don't need to specify it later. And what this would do is the same thing as the line before it, and it would just return false. And so now with this last one, this actually would not be valid because we have already specified the self here, meaning we did not have to write a self parameter in the method. So this would actually just error. Okay, so that was all for the hoop question. So yeah.